Kim Hua-sang. So, Kim Woo-sang is a native of Jucheng, Shandong Province. His father, a scoundrel, sold him for several $100s to the monastery in Wulyan Mountain. Because Kim was a child of ignorance and inferiority, he had to do the chores of letting pigs gather, like a servant. When his master died, leaving little silver behind, the monk left the monastery in his arms and went to work as a small merchant. He was the best at opportunistic profiteering, and over the years he became a wealthy man, buying homes and land on the slopes. His apprentices are numerous. The number of people eating is in the thousands, and the village is surrounded by hundreds of acres of fertile land. He built dozens of homesteads in the village, housed only and not yet inhabited by others. And, if they did, were the industrialess poor who came here with their wives and children to rent his house and land for tenants. Inside each courtyard door, the houses are connected, and the tenants live there. The monk's house is in the middle of the courtyard. There's a hall in the front. Heavy beam columns, painted gold and dazzling. There's a few cases and screens in the hall, glittering and shining to be seen. There's a dormitory with red curtains and embroidered mantels, musk-scented. Sandalwood beds are studded with nutshells, and brocade mattresses folded a foot thick. There's a lot of famous beauty landscape paintings on the walls, hanging almost without gaps. As soon as Kim Hyuk-sang gave a long shout, dozens of servants waited outside, and he answered in unison like thunder. Wearing red lace hats and leather boots, they all gathered like ravens to stretch their necks. They spoke with their hands behind their mouths and ears when they were told to. If a guest arrives suddenly, a dozen tables can be ranged as soon as you have a drink. A variety of delicious dishes, steamed and cooked, are being served, with the mist rising from the heat on the table. I'm just afraid to raise a prostitute in public, but there are a dozen beautiful teenagers, all bright and likable, with their soapy heads and their rap music, which makes them feel good to hear. As the monk went out, a dozen of his horse-riding entourage hugged and hugged, with bows and arrows slapping at each other. The servants called the monk lord. The common people in this county call him grandpa, call him uncle, not master, superior, and even less call him by his nickname. His disciples went out in a slightly weaker voice than the Kim monks, but they were all riding steely horses, much like the average prince. Kim Woo-sang is also widely accepted. That is, thousands of miles away there. Our people with him timely exchange information, in order to master the local military chief. If these officials occasionally offend him in a huff, they are terrified of themselves. The monk's man is vulgar and vulgar, without a bone from head to foot. He never recited a scripture, learned a spell, and never visited a monastery. There were no chanting devices, such as gold nails and drums in his living room, and his apprentices had never seen or heard of them. For tenants, the women dressed as if they were from the capital, supplied with balsam, head oil, nectar, lead powder, all from the monks who had nothing to lose in the spending. So there were hundreds of families in the village who did not farm. It is not uncommon for unscrupulous tenants to cut off the monk's head and bury it under the bed, and the monk is not much to answer for. It is simply the custom of the unscrupulous tenants to drive them out of the village, even if it is over. The monk later bought a child with a different surname and made him his son. And I hired a teacher to teach my son how to do his homework. His son, bright and well-educated, sent him to the county school, where he became a Thai student by convention, and soon took the Shanti and Fuxing test, where he raised his staff. So the monk Kim was called Taegong and called out. The word to used to be added to the word grandfather, so those who used to give him the usual courtesy now pay attention to Sunli. Soon after, the monk died. Jin Juran wore mourning horses, slept on a pillow, and presented himself as a lone mourner facing the bed. The disciples of the Kim monks piled up their beds with wailing bars. But all but one of the Jin's wives wept quietly behind the bed. The doctors arrived in full, revealing their condolences, and the officials' umbrellas and cars blocking the road. On the day of the funeral, the sheds were lined up like clouds, and the house of the panda covered the sky. The grass-covered martyrs are all decorated with gold silk, dozens of covers and ceremonial suits, thousands of horses, nearly 100 beautiful women, are lifelike. Fang Bai and Fang Xiang, two Kairos, are giant men made of cardboard shells, their heads covered in gold jackets. And they are empty but supported by wooden frames, with the living carrying them. It also has a rotating mechanism inside to make the beard fly and the eyes flicker like a scream. Viewers were surprised, some of them running away in tears and horror when they saw it from a distance. The mansions for the monks are palatial, and the loft porch is connected to dozens of acres of land, with thousands of doors so that people can get lost inside. Most of the ornaments, including Lin, Fang, tortoise and snake, are not named. The people who would meet here for the funeral would meet with their car covers. From the local officials, all of whom would bend and worship respectfully at the service of their pilgrimage, to the county's tribute students and petty officials, who would just handhold the ground and kowtow, rather than dare to tirelessly raise funds or handhold the teachers or uncles. Men and women were sweating and flowing, and there was a lot of noise from people with wives holding children and shouting for siblings. Add to that the clanging of juggling plays, the sound of people not even hearing. Those who see the buzz are so invisible beneath their shoulders that they can see only tens of millions of people hovering. One pregnant woman in the crowd was in a hurry to give birth, and several female companions unfurled skirts as a curtain around her to guard her. The only thing they could hear was the cries of the baby, and it was too late to ask whether it was a boy or a girl. A piece of clothing was cut off to wrap the child in her arms, and there were ones holding her. And they shoved her out of the way. It's a wonder, after Kim's burial, he split his legacy into two parts, one for his son, Kim Juin, and another for his apprentices. The Kim Kujin has half his family's fortune and is a monk's property in the north, east and west of his home. But he and the monks are brothers and their interests are still closely linked.
Alright, this story has come to an end. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you.